How's it going, everybody? I'm Adam Sykes. Welcome back to the Blockbusters show. And like I promised at the end of the last review, today we're going to be looking at the 2011 rom-com, What's Your Number?
That's me. Before you judge me, you have to realize my dating life hasn't exactly been stellar.
I locked myself out of my apartment. Do you mind if I use your phone?
When every guy you run into seems to be on the run.
Do you think the woman coming out of your apartment could have helped you with the being locked out problem?
I look at it as trying to avoid hurt feelings.
What's your number?
Allie Darling, played by Anna Faris, looks back at the past 19 men that she's had relationships with in her life and wonders if one of them might be her one true love. Now, before I start, I just want to talk about what I personally think about a lot of romantic comedies. There are a few that are good, but for the most part, especially with like late 2000s, early 2010 comedies like this, movies like Good Luck Chuck, All About Steve, The Ugly Truth, Bride Wars, and this movie especially. This one's not as bad as those, but it's still got a decent amount of problems that I have with it. Anna Faris plays this lady who gets fired from her marketing job, and she feels like she can't find the right guy because she's slept with over 20 people, and she read a magazine article that says that if you've done that, then you'll never find a husband, so she wants to prove that article wrong. But thanks to her across-the-hall neighbor, Chris Evans, who also can't seem to find the right girl, he's just always hooking up with hot chicks and hiding out in her apartment waiting for them to leave the next morning. Revealing that he apparently comes from a family of cops, he says that, oh yeah, I can dig up dirt on anybody, so I can look for all your past relationships and we can see if you can find the right guy. And from there, we go through a bunch of different guys who are either married or in committed relationships or haven't done anything with their life or blah, blah, blah. And you can just tell from the poster and the trailers that these two, Anna Faris and Chris Evans, are going to end up together. This is why I brought up some of those movies at the beginning, because a lot of them have the same issue of the way that they're structured. Tonally, they feel like they want to be a cutesy PG-13 date movie, but they also want to have that raunchy humor that was really popular in 2009 with movies like The Hangover. And this came out the same year as Bridesmaids, and there are jokes lifted wholesale from Bridesmaids. From the opening gag of Anna Faris going to do her makeup and then crawl back into bed so the guy that she's sleeping with is like, wow, you look great in the morning. There's a part very early on, like the first 15 minutes, she's invited to this party and she drunkenly goes off on everyone in the crowd. Again, just like that one scene in Bridesmaids.
The schmuck you went out with in high school, he was the biggest douchebag of them all. You know how Eddie broke up with her? He started dating her best friend, who's here tonight, by the way, Sheila.
As for the other comedy that's in this movie, a lot of it just comes across like you're watching like a TBS or an ABC family sitcom. Like one joke that they have very early on is that, Chris Evans talking about how he has like dirt on everyone in the building. He says, oh yeah, the guy in whatever apartment, he tried marrying his dog. It sounds like a joke you would hear out of like a bad Nickelodeon sitcom. Like, it's not funny, it's just random, and you're just supposed to go, oh, that was the joke. Another reason why I say the humor is like a sitcom is because they do Family Guy style cutaway gags where, oh, they'll show a lot of the exes that Anna Faris hooked up with, and they'll be wearing silly outfits and costumes like, oh look, Chris Pratt, who's one of the guys that she went out with. Chris Pratt, he's wearing a fat suit.
Ronnie, let's go out tonight.
I don't know. There's just so many people out there.
Another problem with this movie is the pacing, because it feels like they focus more time on certain exes than others. Like, one of her exes is played by the guy that plays Dangle on Reno 911, and his scene is like 5 minutes, if that.
Faris? It's Allie!
Oh, doesn't ring a bell.
We dated for like 3 months.
Oh, let's see how things are going now.
Oh, Allie!
And it was just weird because it's like they establish, oh, well, he's a doctor and he's in Miami, and the movie takes place in Boston. So Anna Faris is like, okay, well, I'll fly out to go visit him in Miami. And then his scene happens. It's like 5 minutes, if that. And then it immediately just cuts back and she's back in Boston and she's like, yeah, I don't want to marry him, scratch him off the list. Okay, well, that happened. And Andy Samberg is in the movie, and he's one of the exes, and his whole thing is that he's like this creepy guy who has a weird thing with puppets. It's like, he's in one scene.
You should give me your number. We should catch up. Hey, babe. Hey, you're looking good.
You know what? I think I'm all caught up.
Oh, guys.
Then you got characters like Chris Pratt, who show up multiple times throughout the movie. I feel like they put him in because they wanted to kind of throw you off and make it like, oh, maybe Anna Faris and Chris Pratt are going to get together. But here's the thing. We can already tell that Chris Evans and Anna Faris are going to get together in the end because, you know, there's scenes of them talking together and they're bonding and they have kind of a you know, a decent, you know, acquaintanceship at the beginning, and, you know, they get to know each other more. They start talking to each other through this little adventure of theirs, and slowly but surely, you know they're going to get together in the end. So another problem with the tone is that a lot of the times the main characters kind of come off as unlikable. Anna Faris has like these like really bitchy friends, and her mom is like one of these controlling mothers who's like, oh, you should get married to this rich billionaire guy that you barely know. You know, don't marry, you know, the riffraff. She's like this, you know, high society type. I'm surprised it was Chris Evans, because the way his character was written, I'm like, you know, you could totally use like a Ryan Reynolds for that kind of character, you know, a guy who's always popping off with a one-liner or, you know, a smart-ass comment, but, you know, but he's a suave dude who always gets the ladies. You could totally get a Ryan Reynolds for that. Chris Evans just felt like he knew what movie he was in and was just kind of like sleepwalking through his part. Anna Faris was trying, but you could just tell the material she was given just wasn't that good.
Oh, big old dancing? Huh?
So we're near the third act of the movie, and here's where the third act breakup happens, because Anna Faris sees that on Chris Evans' phone, it's the last guy on the list. All throughout the movie, he was saying that he couldn't find this guy, but then, you know, at this point, this is when their relationship started, you know, coming closer together. And so she's like, you know, you didn't tell me about this? You know, well, we're you know, you're just a good-for-nothing sexaholic. And he's like, yeah, well, you're always wanting to be what everyone tells you to be. Blah, blah, blah. They split up. You know they're going to get back together. She goes out with this guy who's rich. He has a bunch of different franchises all around the world. He does philanthropy and donates to charities and stuff. And her mom wants her to get married to this guy, but she's eventually like, no, I barely know anything about him. She breaks up with him at her sister's wedding, and then there's a scene of her running around town, going to various different weddings until eventually she sees Chris Evans and his band playing at this one, and that's when they rekindle their relationship. They're back together. And the movie ends with a gag about how apparently one of the guys that was on the list she didn't even have sex with. So Chris Evans is actually her number 20. And that's where the movie ends. At the end of the day, I chalk this up to an incredibly mediocre rom-com from around that point where all these kind of romantic comedies were trying to do the same thing. And I will say this, if you can tolerate, or even if you like these kind of romantic comedies, I feel like you might enjoy this one. But if you've seen way too many of them and you've just gotten sick of the tropes and the cliches, then yeah, definitely don't watch it. I mean, this movie has a good cast of people who are good actors and can be really funny comedians, but the script they're given is just so cliche and paint by numbers, and this whole movie feels like it was made hot off an assembly line. It feels like everyone was just going through the motions and there was no like real like passion put into it. It just comes off like that. It's just a mediocre Hollywood movie that just feels like it was made just because, oh, we have all these stars. Yeah, it's a cute little date movie, even though it's rated R, and that's the other thing. You can honestly whittle that down to like a TV-14, and like really, I don't think anything would be that different. That concludes all the Blockbuster videos for February. I've got a couple of more videos coming up in March. I'm going to be trying to continue doing 2 reviews a month, maybe do a third one if I can find the time. We'll see what happens with that next month. But until then, I'm Adam Sykes of The Blockbuster Show, and we will see you guys in the next video.